For that reporting. Appreciate it. For more now on this discussion, Dana Milbank, opinion writer for The Washington Post, joins me now, along with Hugh Hewitt, MSNBC political analyst and host. Thanks to both of you for being here. Dana, I want to start with you. You and I were talking about the fact that after Sandy Hook, when you had a nation that was torn apart by the deaths of 20 children, there was no new gun legislation. Congress couldn't even pass expanded background checks. Could this moment be different?
Right, Kristen, and you remember during that time it felt like surely this time is different. And you had Pat Toomey and Senator Manchin come together, much the way you see Cornyn and Murphy coming together now. So I think we all have to be a little cynical about this and say, we're talking about this now, but we're going to be moving on to something in a couple of days. Maybe if there's a trial, it keeps it in the news, but it tends to fade away. There is one wild card here, though, and that is President Trump. Sure, he said he wouldn't do this, but he often reverses what he said. So he does have the ability, if he gets behind this, and John Cornyn has a lot of bona fides with the right and the gun lobby. So there is that wild card there, but it's anybody's guess. It's
an important point, though, and one of the things that has struck me, Hugh, is we did hear from the president in the wake of the Las Vegas shooting, and he, at that point, expressed an openness, a willingness to have a conversation. We were talking about banning bump stocks. Let's listen to what President Trump had to say. I want to get your reaction on the other side.
Look, we have a tragedy. We're going to do, and what happened in Las Vegas is in many ways a miracle. The police department has done such an incredible job, and we'll be talking about gun laws as time goes by.
Hugh, he said at that point, we'll be talking about gun laws as time goes by. That conversation, as far as I know, hasn't happened, at least in the public sphere. Is this moment different?
No, I kind of share Dana's, not cynicism, but realism about what happens. I sat down with Speaker Ryan for MSNBC after Las Vegas, and at that point, the speaker said he was all for banning bump stocks. He hadn't even heard of bump stocks before that, and let's go forward. And I thought it was going to happen within a month, but of course, legislation requires persuasion, not polarization. And what we're seeing in the aftermath of Florida is the same. It's like an instant replay of the macabre shorthand we have for these. Everyone retreating to almost rote repetition of their talking points instead of looking at, say, for example, David French over at the National Review writing about gun violence restraining orders, or Betsy DeVos on my show last week, or Attorney General Sessions on my show last week, calling for wide-ranging hearings in the Senate on the source of these shooters, their complete emptiness. Watching your hearing earlier, I was thinking to myself, he reminds me of the Aurora shooter. He just does it, the empty zombie vacant thing. Where does that come from? But politicization of this, polarization of this, I think we're going to end up right back where we were after Las Vegas, after Aurora, after Sandy Hook, after Columbine.
And I certainly share both of your skepticism. I guess the question is what is potentially being considered, and you can't even say it's being considered, it's being talked about around the edges, is such a minor action. It would effectively make background checks more effective. It would call for more information sharing. And it's legislation on its face that most people would support, Hugh. So is there a way that the people pushing for this need to change the way they are casting this? Is there any movement you think or possibility?
That's it. They need to not politicize. That's why I think hearings are the way to go, as to a variety of methods that many of us on the right and on the left agree are efficacious. For example, empowering school principals or school district superintendents to pull a red flag and put someone on a do not buy, like a do not fly list because of their, you remember the student that was just interviewed by Tammy? He was a scary kid. Well, when that struck me as when that kind of general knowledge is known, there ought to be a way to transfer that into a system that, full of due process protections, takes guns away from people.
Dana, you hear Hugh's point, and yet the politics are so entrenched. This is a president, you call him the wild card, but he ran on a platform of saying, look, I'm going to protect your Second Amendment rights. He was asked about new laws, the possibility of new laws over the weekend. Take a look at that exchange, and then I want to get you to respond.
Did you see the victims, Mr. President?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did indeed, and it's very sad something like that could happen.
Your gun President.
No response there to that.
Not a whole lot.
Is there no political will when you are facing forces like the NRA, and we are coming up against the midterms?
Yeah.
So that changes the equation as well.
It is exceedingly difficult, and the debate has shifted a bit, as Hugh was alluding to there. Originally, it was about taking certain guns away from everybody, and now they've gotten away from that and said, well, let's take all guns away from some really dangerous, which more people can accept, or even let's do more about mental health. But yet none of it ever seems to happen. Surely we can agree to do more on the mental health side of things. So that's why it's hard to be optimistic.
Quickly before I let you go, your reaction to just seeing the kids in Florida mobilize in the way that they are, calling for rallies, taking action, really speaking to lawmakers with such passion and force and intelligence.
It is heartwarming, much as the Sandy Hook parents were heartwarming, you know, riding their bicycles down here to Washington. I fear that they're going to be in for another disappointment, but my hat's off to them, and all strength to them right now.
All right, Dana and Hugh, thank you for a really important conversation. We will check back in with